Hello and welcome back to Easyweb Tutorials. We hope you've had a good week. And we who are hosting this episode is, as per usual, myself, and I'm Oscar. We have Nicholas, who's controlling the mouse and the computer and the code. And then we have our supervisor, Klaus. So today we're gonna be focusing on if statements in our code to decide whether we want to render out a particular set of code, or if we want to control how the code is rendered out. We can actually use if statements with tag helpers and other things that we will go through today. We can start here by going into our textimage.cshtml file, which is in the templates folder. And here we can see that this is our text image section and our text image component that will always be rendered out in this particular way. So we can go to our start page where we have this section. So if we go to the content here, and we can click up the flex choice here, not the flex sections, but the flex choice. Yeah, exactly, right there. Here we can see we have a description, here our first flex choice, and we have also a link to our article. But let's say here that we want the link to be dependent on the description, or we want the description to describe exactly what kind of link we have added into our flex choice here. So let's change the description to here below you can find a link to our article. Perfect, and we can save and publish the page. And then we can navigate over to our site, which is up and running. We can reload here. And if we go to the bottom of the site, we can, or the bottom of the page, we can see here the flex headline. Here below, you can find a link to our article. Perfect. And now let's say we go back to Easyweb and remove this link. Save and publish. And now we check it out. And now you can see this looks pretty stupid because now it says here below you can find a link to our article and there is no link. And it would also feel a bit stupid if there was a link here, but it didn't have the complementary description to it. So this is a case where we can actually use if statements in the code. And for this video, we're going to be using an if statement to be able to not render out this component whatsoever if we don't have the necessary components or necessary sections inside of it. And here we can now use this tag helper that I mentioned, which is kind of an if statement. So if we use the tag helper ew if key here, this if statement will check for keys or check if a certain key exists or if it has a value. So it will return false if the value is either empty or null, or if the key doesn't exist whatsoever. So here we can say ev if key. For instance, if we check our keys here, we can have a key link. So ew if key link, then this will say that render out this section if the key link exists and has a value. So if we save this and reload our page here, we can see that the section disappears. And now if we go back into Easyweb to add a link to our new article, save and publish, and then reload our site, we can see that the section appears once again because now it finds the key and it sees that the key has a value. But here we had a case where the link is dependent on the description and the description is dependent on the link. So as you can do with usual if statements, you can also use the operators for and or here. So we can try the operator for or first, which is or. It's like two straight lines. So link or we have the text area content key. So if we have this inside of our ew if key tag helper, now this will render out this section if either the link exists and has a value or the text area content exists and has a value. So if we reload our page, it will still be here. And if we go to Easyweb and remove our link and save and publish, we can see when we reload the page that the section is still there. But if we now remove also the text inside of the description box here, we will see that the section disappears. So this we can use to control whether or not we want different parts of the site to render or not, if keys exists or not. And we can also use the AND operator here. So, and that's what we're going to do right now, because we want to render out this section if both the link and the text area content has value. And if we do that, then we can add back the link in Easyweb, and it will, and we can save and publish before we add the text there. Yes, so now the description is empty and we have the link. It still won't render out. And if we add the description, it will render out the section. And this if key statement can be used in some different ways as well. So, for instance, maybe we want to give the user or the editor control over how this section is rendered out. For instance, if they want to have the image on the left or the text on the left, then we can actually use this if key tag helper to do that as well. But to do that, we are going to need another component. So we need a selectable option for the user so they can control how they want the content to render out. So we'll go into the studio. And here we have the text plus image component in our components tab. And if we go to the container or the section container with the text plus image, we can click the plus icon. And here, if we go to the gears in the bottom, so the option with the gears, we can see that we have our selectable option here. We can also search for the selectable option by the magnifying glass here. So we can do both ways. And now we have a selectable option here. We want to move it up so it gets to the top of the container here. And we want to rename it to maybe reverse text and image. And we set the key for this option to reversed. And now we'll save this view and we go back to our page. Now if we scroll down, we can see here at our flex choice that we have a possibility to add reversed text plus image, and that creates a little checkbox that we can check or not. So let's check this box and save our page. And now this won't do anything at all. So if we reload our page here, nothing is going to happen. But let's say here that we want to be reversing the order of these components now that are rendered out in this container div. Then we can, on the div that we have as a container, so the div with the container class, we can put an if not key. And the if not key tag helper does the exact same thing as the if key tag helper, except that it returns true if the key doesn't exist or doesn't have a value. So if not key reversed here. So this will check for the value of our checkbox and return whether it is checked or not. And if it's not checked, we won't reverse it. So then we can just copy this whole div with a container. And we paste it down here. And here we put an if key reversed instead. So if the key reversed is found and has a true value, then this will render out instead. And what we want to do here then is just switch places of the divs with the text and the div with the image.
Can you also Uno reverse?
You cannot Uno reverse, sadly, but that would be pretty awesome. It's one of the best cards in the game. So now when we reload our page here, we should see that our text and our image switches places. And then if we go back to Easyweb and click out this reversed checkbox, save and publish, and reload our page, we'll see that they go right back to how they were in the beginning. We can also do other design things if we want to give the user or the editor control over, for instance, a background color or a thing like that. And we can use the same component, the selectable option for that, but we can tweak it with some settings to make it a drop-down selection instead. So we can go into Easyweb and we'll go back into the studio. We'll click the plus icon and we'll add one more selectable text box here. So selectable option checkbox. And we'll name this one background color. And we'll also add a key for BG color because we're lazy and don't want to write the whole word. So we'll save the view. And now when we know this won't disappear, we'll click the settings icon here or the little gear and we can go to settings. And here we can add some selectable options. So on the common tab, we can add the selectable option. So we'll minimize the client and here we have a selectable options name/value and this is what we wanna add here. So we can have a key that is blue, for instance, and with the value blue. And then we'll add another pair, which might be green. And then we can have another which is none if they don't want to have a background, or if we don't want to have a background. Now we'll click the OK, and we'll save the view. And now when we go back to our start page, we can see that in our flex choice here, we can add the background choice. And we have a drop-down with the selections that we just specified. So let's say we choose blue for now, and we'll save and publish the page. And we'll go back to the code. So what do we want to do here now when the value is blue? Then we want to have a blue background for our container div, or maybe for our entire section div. So we can try it with the entire section div first. And now we're going to be doing some Razor code here. And Razor code, if you're not familiar with it, is kind of C# code within the CS/HTML file. It's not very advanced and you can do a lot of things with it, but today we're going to do things that are included in the framework for easyweb.site. And it's a very, very simple method. So first we need to tell the file that we're going to write some Razor code, and we do that with an @ sign. And then we'll put a parenthesis. So this represents, here is where we'll place our Razor code. And then there is a method that all of our views and view files have access to, which is called value. And then we'll have another parenthesis here, and here is where we'll specify the key for what value we want to fetch. And the key we set to BG color, if you remember. So what this will do is it will fetch the value of our BG color option. So it can be blue, green, or none. And then it will place this value inside of our class attribute here in the section. So this will add a class with the name of our option that we have chosen in Easyweb. And everything we have to do now is we need to create a CSS class that corresponds to this value that we will inject into the class attribute. So we'll go to the style.css file, and here we have a lot of styles that we can disregard, but we'll just create a class for blue. And here we'll set the background color to blue. And when we're here, we might as well create a class for green. Pale green and light blue. So we'll save the CSS file, and then we can reload our page. And here we can see that we got our blue background. If we go into Easyweb and choose green instead, we'll save and publish, and we reload, we'll get the green color. And just to make sure it still works, we can check the reversed option and see that the text and image will be reversed. Great. The last thing we're going to do today is talk a little bit more about Razor code in the CSHTML views, because we can actually use the Razor code instead of the if tag helpers to inject classes for our reversed mode. So instead of having to repeat ourselves with the container divs, we can just have everything in the same div, but we can just inject a class from the from the choice in Easyweb instead. So we can remove the if key attribute for the section, or not from the section, but from the containers, from the divs. And we can delete one of the divs entirely. Then we'll remove that if key. And here we can do instead a little bit more advanced Razor code. So we can do in our text image class here, which we want to affect, we can put another piece of Razor code here. And now we'll use another method that is predefined for all of the CSHTML files, which is called selected option. So this will return true or false whether our option here is selected. And if we remember, we had the key reversed, so we'll inject the key reversed here. And now Nicholas made an inline if statement here. So if the key is reversed, then we will put the class inside of the first quotation marks, and else we will put the class instead of the second quotation marks. And if it's not reversed, we don't want to inject the class here whatsoever. And the class we're going to inject if the selected option is true is the class reversed. So we'll go back into the style sheet to create a class for reversed. So here we will add the reversed class, and we'll do some flex options here to make it reverse the order. So we'll put order 2 on this one. And we can also add the text image class here or the text class to make sure that this won't happen on any other elements on the site. And we can also add some padding to the left so it doesn't get so swamped with our image here. So 40 pixels of padding left, and now when we reload the site, we can see that they are indeed reversed. And if we click out this and change the background color to none, we should have an unreversed text and image section without a background color. And we do. Well, that'll be all for this week's video. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again next week. Have a wonderful week, everybody.